The music of the Enlightenment period is known as classical music. This is somewhat of a confusing term, given that our current culture tends to refer to anything outside of pop music as being classical. However, from an historical perspective, the term refers specifically to music of this period. Classical music reflects the social climate of the Enlightenment. The new beliefs in fairness and equality which permeate this era are clearly reflected in the music produced by this culture. The Enlightenment period is a time of tremendous social revolution. Cultural changes were rapid and sometimes extreme. Interestingly, music played a very important role in this process. In fact, one of the most significant and influential of the Enlightenment reformers, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, was also active as a musician and composer. In addition to his great love for music, his interest was related to his social ideas. At its core, the Enlightenment is a philosophical perspective that applies logic to complex issues such as emotions, social problems, and politics. Meaning, it is a comprehensive plan for using rational thinking to improve the quality of life and culture. Music, as an active form of human expression, is an important byproduct and reflection of the changes that were moving through society at this time. As such, Rousseau and other Enlightenment philosophers felt music was important and needed to keep pace with the social climate of the day. The Enlightenment was concerned with the natural state of man, meaning there was a concept of humanity as being a part of the natural world and therefore subject to its laws. A sort of symbolic natural man became the center of much philosophical debate in the period. The idea was to contemplate how man was meant to be, roaming free in the world, seeking out his own fate and happiness without the constraints of oppressive social regimes. From this perspective, the ideal society is one in which the free will of every man is honored and respected. Therefore, cultural pursuits should be inclusionary rather than exclusionary, natural rather than elitist. This was a reaction against the high art, opulent, aristocratic style of the Baroque. Rather than conveying status, Enlightenment audiences expected music to be more natural in character and style so that it could appeal to everyone equally. In keeping with the fast-paced social changes of the period, the Enlightenment audience also was interested in anything that was seen as new, modern, or sophisticated. The term for this style was galant, and perhaps ironically, it involved a paring down and simplifying of the outmoded Baroque, rather than any innovations added to that style. Galant music was easy to understand, light in style, and intended to be enjoyed by everyone equally, not just the upper class. This was accomplished primarily by making the music easier to listen to and understand. The construction of Enlightenment music is far more austere or simple and clear than Baroque styles. Melodic phrases are generally shorter and follow logical speech patterns. Harmony is generally clear and simple and centered on predictable chord progressions that are easy to follow. The texture of classical music is also homophonic, but is far simpler and easy to listen to because there is a lot less going on than in Baroque music. To help keep the texture light and clear, classical composers abandoned the heavy basso continuo and its bombastic harpsichord, favoring simpler, lighter bass lines instead. At the same time, because Enlightenment music places focus on entertainment, music also needed to be fun and engaging. This was generally accomplished through subtlety, since overt or aggressive musical elements were thought to cloud the ability of the audience to understand and enjoy the listening experience. As a result, classical composers avoided the heavy-handed intensity of Baroque music and favored instead a more natural view of mood, which tended to flow organically through a variety of emotions and feelings, rather than just targeting a single, strong affect. This also allowed composers to express shades of emotion, rather than a single moment of intense feeling. This led to the development of a more subtle use of dynamics. Rather than the sudden shifts of terrace dynamics, such as in the Baroque, classical composers used gradual changes in volume, such as the decrescendo, or slow decrease in volume, and the crescendo, or slow increase in volume. These subtleties were lost on the harpsichord since its dynamic capabilities are quite limited, so the piano became the keyboard of choice for the classical period. The name piano is short for pianoforte, meaning soft loud, which describes the ability of the piano to play at various dynamic levels, which was an innovation over its earlier cousin, the harpsichord. Similarly, rhythm and melody are far more flexible and varied than in Baroque music. Rather than using the same or similar rhythmic pattern throughout a piece, as we hear, for example, in Vivaldi's Spring, classical composers used unexpected pauses, changes of pattern, syncopation, or variations to create interest and fun. In addition to matching the social trends of the period, some changes in music came about simply because they were practical. Given the Enlightenment focus on logical thinking, education was an important priority for the new and growing middle class. It made sense for composers to write music that could be understood and performed by amateurs, since both music publishing and private teaching had become a potential source of income. In addition, for the first time in history, public concerts became common in many larger cities. This isn't surprising, since it is a very democratic way of approaching the cost of live music. Instead of a single wealthy patron paying the bill, everyone who wants to see the performance splits the cost equally. If your livelihood is dependent upon selling tickets, it is important to appeal to as many listeners as quickly as possible. Therefore, Enlightenment composers kept their music light, easy on the ears, entertaining, and fun. This means that first and foremost, classical music tends to be catchy, meaning it is made to get stuck and stay stuck in your head. Just as with a pop musician of today, the classical composer benefited from getting his audiences to come back to hear his music again and again. A very effective way of doing this is to get a melody stuck in your ear, so that classical music tends to focus on catchy, tuneful melodies that are short and easy to remember. What is interesting about this period is that its social revolutions are not directly reflected in the music of the time. That is to say, the music is not loud, bombastic, or angry in a style that we might expect to reflect war and strife. Instead, it is bubbly, light, entertaining, fun, and engaging. This, of course, was its own form of social revolution, given that complexity in music was seen as catering to the upper class, and the new focus on simplicity and clarity was a way of appealing to everyone equally. Perhaps we should also consider the implication that when we reached a point in history that music was created for the masses and created for everyone, we also reached a point in history that music was simplified and constrained by the need to avoid offending or challenging the listener. This points to an important issue that is yet to be fully resolved in our society. Who really controls the quality, style, flavor, and intent of a musical product? Is it the composer, or is it the audience?